Mike Locksley hasn't been good enough this year for Maryland football.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day, and also publisher on InsideBlackandGold.net. So make sure you guys go over there to check out all your Terps news. And today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Mike Locksley has not been nearly good enough for the Maryland football program this year. I think it's fair to say that Coach Locksley hasn't done a good enough job this year. And I like Coach Locksley. I'm a Coach Locksley guy. I like what he stands for. I like what he brings to the Maryland football program. I feel like he brings more than just football. I feel like he brings a sense of community and different things like that, and different service projects and doing stuff that's bigger than just Maryland football. But talking about Coach Locksley this year as purely a football coach, he hasn't been good enough. And he has to get better in the second half of the season. He has to finish this year a lot better than it has started in the first 5 games for me to feel good about Coach Locksley and what he has done. I always ask the question before the season. I said, was it more Talia or was it more Coach Locksley, for the reason that Maryland football was on a really good track record and we were able to bounce out of the ground and we were able to make 3 straight bowl games? And I'm still not exactly sure. I always kind of compared it to, I know it's not this and I know it's not close to this, but I always like to compare it to the conversations that people have about Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Was it more Belichick? Was it more Brady when winning all those Super Bowls? And now when you look back, I think a lot of people would agree that it was more Tom Brady. At least that's my opinion. And that's kind of how I compare Mike Locksley to how he is as a football coach. Was it more Talia and him bringing this program around, or was it more Coach Locksley? And now through the first 5 games of the season, I don't want to say it's more Talia, but I think a lot of people would have to say that so far, because things haven't looked awesome without Talia through the first 5 games of the season. The reason I'm hesitant to say that is because the one position that hasn't been bad, I'm not saying every other position has been bad, but one of the positions that hasn't been too bad yet has been quarterback. So I don't want to sit here and be like, yeah, like the quarterback thing's not working and everything else is not working. Like, quarterback hasn't been one of the problems. So I'm hesitant to say it was more Talia. I think that conversation still has to wait. But I do think that Coach Locksley has to be a better coach in this second half of the season for the Terps to reach their goals, for the Terps to get to a bowl game, for the Terps to have a winning record. Forget a winning record in the Big Ten, just for the Terps to have a winning record overall on the season. Mike Locksley is going to have to be a really good coach in the second half to be able to do that. And so far, some of these performances that he has put up, I think that hasn't been good enough. Michigan State, first loss of the season. We lose to Michigan State 27-24. There's different people you can blame. There's different players. But let me tell you something. I've been watching Aiden Childs play quarterback. I've watched a good amount of Michigan State football this year. And I hate the fact that his best game came against us. I think that's something that Coach Locksley needed to do better at. I know he's not our defensive coordinator, but I know he's part of the game plan going into what we're going to do defensively and how we're going to slow him down. And at the end of the day, it starts at the top and it starts with Coach Locksley. And I've seen Aiden Childs look really mediocre this year, and we made him look like the next big thing coming out of the Big Ten. We made him look like he was going to be a really good player. Like, I just watched him play Oregon, and I know we're not Oregon in terms of the talent, but he just went 10 of 17 for 154 yards. I watched him play a little bit against Ohio State. He went 13 of 19 for 167 yards. I watched a little bit of him play BC. He had 3 interceptions against BC. And so the one outlier game in this game, or in this season right now for Aiden Childs, is against Maryland. And so a lot of that to me is, our secondary is not great, whatever. Our corners don't look awesome so far this year. But to me, a lot of that starts at the top in terms of the game plan, what we're going to do, what in-game adjustments are we going to make. A lot of that has to do with Coach Locksley and the fact that Aiden Childs threw for 363 this year for us. And I just told you what he's done against other opponents. Hasn't looked good. 3 picks against Boston College. Ohio State didn't look great. The game against Oregon didn't look good. Couldn't move the ball all game. Scored like towards the end of the game, those 10 points. I couldn't do anything all game. But against Maryland, they scored 27, and he has 3 touchdowns with 363. Like, to me, we can blame a lot of that on our personnel and whatever. But the fact that we gave that much, like, we're not that much different than BC, I would think, in terms of talent. Maybe BC's a little bit better than us this year. I don't know if I would even say that. If we went head-to-head against BC, I think we'd be in the game. I think we'd have a chance to win that game. And so to me, it's coaching. A lot of it has to do with coaching. And you could blame Coach Williams as well, our defensive coordinator, and say he hasn't been good enough either. But I'm going to start with the top with Mike Locksley and say the game plan wasn't good enough for the defensive side of things. The in-game adjustments weren't good enough. We saw whatever we were doing wasn't working, and we weren't able to figure out a better way to slow down a kid that hasn't been that good this year. And that's just one example. Michigan State game is just one example. You can go head over to the Indiana game, our other Big Ten opponent. Curtis Rourke, again, threw for 359 against us, 3 touchdowns. And our defense forced 4 turnovers, and we still can't win the game. I mean, I know I gave in a lot of blame on the players and said they haven't been good enough, whatever. Like, this guy hasn't been good enough. Offensive line hasn't been good enough. Defensive line hasn't been good enough. But I got to say, Coach Locksley wasn't good enough. If we force 4 turnovers, if our defense forced 4 turnovers, and Coach Locksley's supposed to be known as an offensive coach, the defense forces 4 turnovers, I expect us to win that game. And I think that's a pretty fair thing to say for the Maryland football program. If we force 4 turnovers, Coach Locksley should be able to get that offense going enough where we are able to beat a team like Indiana. And I know Indiana's ranked this year, and they're having a big year for their standards and everything. But we should be able to beat that program if we force them to 4 turnovers. Our offense should be good enough that day to win that type of game. In a game where Billy Edwards doesn't turn over the ball at all, and we can't win the game with 4 turnovers, that's when I'm like, the coaching hasn't been good enough yet for Maryland football. And then I also talk about some of the balance that's going on. We still are by far the leading team in attempts in the Big Ten in passing attempts. We have the most passing attempts in the Big Ten again. And I said this year, why should the team look like that? It doesn't make sense because we have a different team. Why are we doing stuff that we did with Talia? I don't think Billy Edwards' run game has been enough in the game plan, and that's Mike Locksley, a lot of it. And the thing that frustrates me is he came into the season saying that we were going to be a completely different team than what we have been. And that means that he hasn't been able to figure out a way to get to where he wanted to be as a team. He told us we were going to be a team that runs the ball more this year, a team that was going to be defensive-led. He sounded like he was going to want to run the football a lot and play good defense. And he hasn't been able to figure out how to win games doing that. And that's the Big Ten way. A lot of it is run the football, play good defense. And that's why I think a lot of teams coming from the Pac-12 can have trouble adjusting. It's because Big Ten football is different. The SEC and Big Ten football are just different. And I think Mike Locksley hasn't done a good enough job adjusting to the new personnel that we have. We no longer have shutdown corners out there. We can't just run man coverage and hope that they hold up against the Michigan State receivers. We don't have Tarheeb Still anymore, or we don't have Deontay Banks and Ja'Cory Bennett. Like, things haven't really felt like they have changed, but it felt like our personnel has changed so much. And the fact that they haven't adjusted to their personnel, it kind of feels like they don't know how to win a different way. And the way we win is throw the ball a lot, pass for a lot of yards, use the receivers on the outside. Our defense might get up some yardage, but we're going to force a couple of turnovers, and we're going to win it that way, which isn't a consistent way to win with how the Terps team is formatted. So I think Coach Locksley has to be better. I think he has to improve because I don't think he's been good enough so far this year for Maryland football. And I want to say I'm a Coach Locksley guy. I don't think he should be fired or anything. He's had some really good past seasons, and we're still on the right track as a program. And a big part of that is the 2025 class, and I'm going to talk about them. I think they're going to have to come in and play right away, a lot of those guys, for the Terps to continue to be a good program. I'm going to talk about that after this ad from LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find a quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to a perfect role in a given month. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So I think the Maryland 2025 class is going to have to be really good. And I want to talk about them in a couple of different ways because I'm also concerned about us starting to lose guys in that class. I'm a little bit concerned about that. I'm not saying that we're going to lose recruits in that class, but I do think that it's a little bit like you can easily lose some of those guys when things don't look awesome, when things aren't going how you expected them to go, when things aren't going, you aren't having the season that you want to have. And all those guys have still stayed loyal, besides a couple that have decommitted, but there hasn't been a huge one that has been like, whew, that hurts. But I do think that the more and more I watch this season, these guys are going to have the impact or the chance to come in and make an impact right away. But not only that, I think they have to for us to be a successful football program. And I know it's way too early to kind of talk about it, but I do think that it's kind of important to say that this 2025 class could be extremely important for the future of Maryland program because right now, this team, I don't know how it's going to finish up this year. I can't say we're going to make a bowl game. I can't say that we're going to get to a better record in the Big Ten. I can't say those things. We play some really good programs, including Penn State, Oregon, USC, and as well as some other programs that aren't quite on that level, but are still really good teams that I can't say we're better at, like Rutgers, like in Iowa, even Minnesota. There's some teams that are really good that we play still this year. And I'm saying that to say that I don't know how good we are going to be and continue to be. And I don't know the type of losses that we could potentially lose in the portal. That's something you always have to worry about after a down year, after a year that wasn't quite good. You don't know how many guys you're going to lose in the portal. I can almost assure you our quarterback room will probably lose 2 guys. You'll probably lose MJ Morrison. You'll probably lose Cameron Edge. I think that's a pretty fair assessment with Malik Washington coming in. And Malik Washington's interesting because Billy Edwards can return next year. And so you wonder, does he get any time next year? I think that there's entirely a possibility that he plays a good amount next year for Maryland football because we might need him to. And honestly, we might just want the future to start. I don't know. Billy Edwards has been playing good football, but if he starts to cool down over these last couple of weeks and going into the season, then we might turn to Billy Edwards as a guy that we potentially might not want to start for the entire year next year. And you might have a short leash next year. I mean, that's just the way it is with the talent of Malik Washington, because that's what this program is going to be built around for the next couple of years. It's all about Malik Washington. And so he could have a chance to play right away next year. And it might not look awesome right away. It could look really good. But I think that he's a guy that he could definitely play right away, just depending on kind of how Billy Edwards continues to play. If he continues to play like he's been playing, then I would expect Malik to sit one year, then to be the starter the next year. But the quarterback position is definitely interesting, but it's a lot of the positional players that I feel like outside of quarterback that I'm like, you guys are going to have to come in and be instant impacts, and we're really going to need that for Maryland football. The one guy I think of for really big time, I think of Jalen Gilchrist is going to have to come in and potentially be a starting lineman for us. Right now, I haven't liked how our offensive line has looked. It's looked okay at times. It looks decent, but it's not ever at a high level. It's always at either decent or it feels a bad level. And you get to recruit and Jalen Gilchrist, that's a high level type of guy. We got to make sure we keep him. We cannot let that kid flip. And he's a guy that could potentially come in and play right away on the offensive line, and that's rare for football. That just doesn't really happen, especially at a Big Ten type of program. But when you have a recruit like this, a guy that doesn't normally choose Maryland at the 4-star top 100 player, I think he has a chance to play right away. I'm thinking of what Jordan Seaton's doing over there at Colorado. Like, he's been a really good player for Colorado, and Gilchrist isn't quite what Seaton is, but he's still really good and really talented. And I think that he could come in right away and really help us somewhere on the offensive line. I think he's that talented and provide maybe really good play in the future. Maybe not his freshman year, but maybe his sophomore year. And I think a lot of next year is going to be about getting some of these guys reps, getting some of these younger guys reps, because it just is I think it's just the projection of where we're going as a program. We need to take a younger look at things and start to develop for the future. I think this year's team is kind of in between, where we have some young guys, but a lot of it's still the older guys. But we need a little bit more talent, and this 2025 class brings that. And then I look at other guys as well as like Bryce Jenkins, who could play offensive line or defensive line. He's a guy that we're going to need his big body of the 4-star wherever he is. We're going to need him to play probably. If it's on the defensive line, I expect him to be in the rotation. If it's on the offensive line, I'm still not exactly sure with him, but I do think it's important for him to kind of play right away. And then I look at guys like Zymier Smith, whatever he plays, listed as an athlete. If he plays corner, if he plays running back, receiver, I don't even know exactly, but I think he's a guy that has to come in and make an impact. We lose Ty Felton and we lose Caden Prather. We lose a lot of that kind of oomph in our receiver room. And so I think Zymier Smith's going to have to come in and be a playmaker potentially on the offensive side of things. And there's other guys that I feel like have to make an impact right away for Maryland football. Messiah Delhomme, our secondary has been really bad, and I know he's a safety, and our safety unit hasn't been bad, but I think he's a guy that potentially could have to come in and make an impact. Maybe Jaden Ships, he's a corner. He might have to come and make an impact. I just think that we have to be better in a lot of places. And I think the 2025 class is a spot to look at where we can't lose anybody in that class, but also I think it's a place to look at where we could have some guys come in and really change kind of the prediction of and the production and the trajectory of where Maryland football is going to go. And I think the 2025 class has to do that. Like, they have to save a potential down year for Mike Locksley. What Terps players need to step up after the bye? I will give you a couple players that have to be better after this ad from the Gametime app. Gametime has new features called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Talk about a super deal and how good it is, as well as other tiers of deals. Walk the listeners through the experience of buying concert tickets with Gametime and Gametime picks. You guys have to get on Gametime deals. It's a super cool deal. Use the app. Use the app and you can get customized spots. And Gametime has all these great types of things that you can look at. They have super deals, seat views before you buy, lowest price guaranteed, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and etc. So make sure you guys go over to Gametime, download the Gametime at Crane account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? Gametime. I think guys have to be better in the second half of the season for Maryland football. For us to succeed as a program, I think there's numerous players that you could kind of point to, but I think after this bye, I'm going to be looking at a couple players to improve. I think one guy is Nolan Ray. He's a guy that kind of have slowed down a little bit, that I thought he could have a really big impact and start challenging Roman Hemby, but it feels like over the last couple of weeks, he's taken kind of a little bit of a step back, and I'm going to be looking for him to ramp it back up, to get it back and going. I think he's a guy that we really need an extra weapon sometimes, especially last game when Prather got hurt late in the game, Typhon got hurt later in the game, and I think he's a guy that needs to, after the bye, get back up, get back to what he was and getting that explosive ability going downhill. He couldn't really get things going against Indiana, but I really want to see him play a little bit better after the bye and get back to what he was a couple weeks ago. I think our entire corner room has to be better. I mean, I know I feel like I'm kind of roasting on those guys, but it hasn't been good enough. And we're playing so many different guys, so it's like weird. But I think you got to look at Jalen Husky as a guy that's got to be better after the bye. Braden Lee, Kevin Humes, Perry Fisher, all four of those guys got to be better. I think there's good players in that room. I don't think we have anyone great. I don't think we have a shutdown guy. We don't have a Deontay this year. We don't have a Tarheeb Still this year. We don't have a Jacorian Bennett. We don't have that type of player. And so when you don't have that type of player, it's okay. You can still play well, but I think you got to be in the right spots. There's things that you can't do. You can't get beat over the top. You can't get beat for big plays. You got to play more sound technique. You have to take less chances, because it's like Deontay Banks, he might have gotten beat a couple times, but he would make it up for a couple of big-time plays that a lot of people just couldn't make. And I don't know if we have a guy like that this year that can make up for a couple of bad plays. So I think when I look at it and I say, this quarter room has to be more even after the bye. It has to be a little bit better. And I'm looking at the whole room. Perry, Husky, Hume, Braden Lee, whoever gets a chance in there, gotta be a little bit better on the outside. I think that's something that's really important, something that has to be better after the bye. I'm also looking at Billy Edwards. I thought Billy Edwards' stat line looks really good against Indiana, but he missed some throws. And I need to be a little bit more consistent as a thrower, because clearly we can't afford to miss throws. Even this week coming up against Northwestern, I think you got to make as many throws as you can, or you could get in trouble and look at the scoreboard and look and say we're down to Northwestern, a team that we cannot afford to lose to. And Billy Edwards hasn't played bad, but I'm looking at after the bye week for him to maybe we run a couple new plays, a couple new things, maybe get that run game going. I could continue to talk about that, but I think he's a guy that has to be a little bit better. And I also think the Maryland tight end room, I want to see a little bit more. Dylan Wade last game had 3 receptions, 15 yards, but I want to see some explosiveness from Preston Howard and Dylan Wade. I know Preston's been in and out with injury, but I think that tight end room is definitely really talented. I want to see more. See a little bit of plays downfield. I want to see a little bit bigger plays. I think I want to see more from those two young guys that I think are really good players that have the potential to make impacts. But I think there's numerous players that have to improve after the bye. But I'm looking at the bye and I'm saying, Coach Locksley hasn't been great after the bye. And so I want to see what it looks like after the bye this week against Northwestern, because I'm going to talk about the next couple of days. This isn't a loss that we can take. So I think there's numerous guys at every single position group you can look at that has to be better. The entire offensive line, the quarterback, some of the running backs. Nothing has been like great, but I think that we're going to be okay. I do. I don't think this year's lost yet. You lose to Northwestern, it might be, but I think that there's still a lot of football to be played, and we got to let it play out. But that's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.